Woo! Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. I so do appreciate you tuning in. I am live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. You guys can see me there. Now, there's something that I want to bring up before I get into the 6 o'clock hour. I've got lots of cool things planned. Las Vegas felon beats up fellow inmate. But the story gets even more rich because he doesn't just beat up the inmate, okay? This is in the same courtroom where that maniac pounced on the judge. You guys remember the clip? He like flew. He turned into a flying squirrel and pounced on a Las Vegas judge. This is in the same courtroom. Something's going on with that courtroom. This is the same courtroom, and he randomly just started punching a fellow inmate at a hearing. So we're going to talk about that. Plus, oh no. You guys, Tucker Carlson, he might get sanctioned by the EU for his Putin interview, which I believe drops today. I think he's already conducted it, but it drops today. We're going to talk about that. And then, how is that a rabbit hole? Doocy, he says this to Karen Jean-Pierre, who is black and lesbian, by the way. They clash over whether or not Joe Biden and his brain still work. Is Joe Biden mentally fit? And Kieran Jean-Pierre, she says, "I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with you." And he goes, "How is that a rabbit hole?" So we're going to talk about that before we get into the 6 o'clock hour and what I've got planned here. I do need to talk about this. Representative Cam Buckner. This is incredible. He has created a bill. It's HB 4795. HB 4795. I'd imagine there's going to be a lot of opposition, specifically from maybe housing developers on this, but he has created legislation that would ban single family zoning. Yes. So it defines zoning unit as a county, municipality, or township that has adopted zoning regulations and uh, defines other terms. So there we go. It's very broad. The bill. I'm just going to read straight from the bill. I've got it right here. Provides that on and after June 1st of 2025 for a zoning unit with a population equal to or greater than 100,000 but less than 500,000, and on and after June 1st, 2026 for a zoning unit with a population equal or greater than 500,000, the zoning unit may not zone the area exclusively for single family residential use. So, what's this all about? Well, they're going to stop zoning. Now, I don't know Bloomington Normal if they are separate zoning units, or like they'd be considered separate zoning unions. Together, we're well over 100,000 of the population, the Twin Cities. For places like Peoria, they're over 100,000 in population. That would mean that they are no longer zoning areas for single family homes, which means multifamily is the only option. And Cam Buckner, his whole thing, he puts out there on Twitter that this is about affordable housing. And we have a housing crisis or housing shortage. And, it's truly incredible uh, what's going on here. They don't want you to own anything, and they want you in a two-bedroom apartment, and that's really what this is all about. They don't want you to own anything. They don't want you to have ownership, because what we're talking about here is now there will be no houses built, like single-family homes built, in Peoria. We're just looking at multifamily housing units. Now, I don't know, I think you gotta go through some loopholes, to try to get duplexes classified as some sort of multifamily. I'm not a realtor, I'm not a housing developer, so I really don't know. I'm going to try to do some more digging on this, but, uh, from what I understand, multifamily housing, it's gotta be at least 4 units. Okay, so we're talking apartments. All they're going to be building in Peoria anymore, if this ban gets passed, if this bill gets pushed through, and believe me, I bet it will, because we're already kind of seeing it. They're Bloomington, Normal. They're not really addressing um, the single family zoning. They always approve multifamily zoning. There's a bunch of apartments that have been going up. There's something in Hayworth where they're like copy paste multifamily housing, and I don't know if they're gonna plan to build these multifamily units, and then house the migrants there. I have no idea. I think it's odd that we're not building houses for people to buy and own. Uh, when we're talking multifamily housing, we're talking people renting from somebody. And you don't own your home after about 15 years or 30 years. I don't know how long your mortgage is, right? In about 15 to 20 years, you own that. You own your home. The bank doesn't have it anymore after you pay your mortgage off, right? It's concerning, and I don't like this bill. It's out there. We'll have to see what happens. I'll try to do my best to get more information on what this really means for Bloomington Normal, because there's Bloomington and then there's Normal. Are they a zoning unit together? I don't know. We'll have to see. Okay. Let's get into it. The Las Vegas felon who beats up a fellow inmate, and ironically, this happened in the same courtroom where this maniac pounced on a judge. So, remember that insane inmate who turned into a flying squirrel and pounced on a Las Vegas judge? Well, something is going on in that courtroom because another inmate, a different inmate, in the same courtroom randomly attacked and started punching a fellow inmate at a hearing. So this is according to the New York Post. A convicted Las Vegas felon brutally attacked a fellow inmate during a hearing inside the same courthouse where another man jumped over a bench and attacked a judge just 1 month ago. Dustin Langham. He's 18 years old and he was sitting next to several inmates inside of the courtroom when he suddenly just unleashed this barrage of blindsided punches at a fellow inmate. Courtroom cameras captured the chaotic moment. Langham, the 18-year-old, began his assault, landing several hits on the target as court personnel rushed to separate the two men. Langham, he had pleaded guilty to biting a correctional officer, and he bit him on the hand during an incident last year when he was 17 years old. So, how did he wind up biting a correctional officer's hand? Well, he was charged with several counts of battery to an officer dating back to a December incident. Um, and then he bites the hand of the officer while he's in the detention center, and then he throws a brick at another correctional officer. So, wow. uh, Guy's only 18, and he's got quite the rap sheet there. Clark County, this is the Clark County courtroom, they need to revise their policies. There is no reason why violent convicted felons that resort to biting correctional officers, like that is beyond violent. I don't know why these convicted felons are in a courtroom without cuffs. They should have ankle uh, ankle bracelets. They should have chains. They should have their hands cuffed. Like liberal areas are getting so bad that it's gotten to the point where people aren't even safe from flying felons in the courtroom with armed guards. Okay, this is Las Vegas, a liberal city. These criminals don't even care anymore. They're becoming increasingly more brazen every day. They say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but that's not true when we have progressives running things. Usually, it starts in places like Sin City and it makes its way across the country. Pretty soon, if we allow for this to happen and they don't change their policies and strap them up in cuffs and treat them like the animals they are, because animals bite people. Okay? He's an animal. You have to treat him like he's an animal. He's biting people. Okay? These convicts seriously lack a form of impulse control. Democrats are not only, not only say, "Hey, let's let felons vote." They should be able to vote. Democrats will say that, but not only will they say that, they'll also claim that they want to end mass incarceration. But those are some of the last things we should be doing if we want to keep society civilized. Okay, we currently have an under incarceration problem and a culture that victimizes criminals. But when we have so many people resort to violence when they don't get their way, we must keep these people away from the general public. I'm a Christian. I'm praying for this man. I pray for the criminals, right? The incarcerated. Obviously, maybe he's mentally ill of some guy. I don't know. This man was already in prison for biting an officer. Who in the world does something like that? These people act like literal animals, and they're unsafe to themselves and they're unsafe to others. And you gotta lock them up quite literally with cuffs so that way they don't pounce at judges like flying squirrels or pummel people in the face, other inmates in the face. You gotta change up the policies. I don't know what's going on in that courtroom, but I'm not gonna be surprised. It won't be long. Let's just put it this way before another inmate makes headlines. I do have to take a quick break. You're listening to The Morning Buzz. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Cat Peterson 929. We're going to be right back and we're going to talk about Tucker Carlson because is Tucker Carlson going to get sanctioned by the EU for his Putin interview? We'll have to see. Woohoo! Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. We've got so much to get to, and I'm so excited. But yes, the Las Vegas felon beating up a fellow inmate, and this happened in the same courtroom where this inmate just pounced on this Las Vegas judge. I mean, absolutely incredible. He starts randomly attacking this fellow inmate. They need to adjust their courtroom policies. Hey, I do want to get to this story. Tucker Carlson, he might actually get sanctioned by the EU. His Putin interview is supposed to drop today. I'm totally pumped for it. And he possibly could get sanctioned by the EU. The In the European Union, they don't respect the press. We know that. They don't respect the press. That's because the EU, the officials, the elected officials there, they believe that government should be the judge of truth. Okay. And they believe that the general public is too stupid to confirm what's factual and what's misinformation. But as history has shown us, no one who cares about the truth would hide it. Okay. So according to Newsweek, Tucker Carlson, he might actually face some sanctions over his interview with Putin. We all know that this is newsworthy and that you don't have to agree with anything Putin says or does to interview him. We all agree that the war in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, this is newsworthy. Why? Because you're paying for it. Okay, that's why it's newsworthy. The fact that people are so mad about this is what makes people want to tune in even more. I'm so pumped for this interview to drop today because people have been trying to hide it. I mean, the last thing you want to do, and you want, if you want people to not watch this thing, would be to try to hide it or would be to try to squash it, right? If the last thing you want is for people to watch the interview, then this is the last thing you should be doing. Trying to hide it, trying to sanction Tucker Carlson for conducting the interview. I'd imagine I bet they're going to sanction him. It depends on the context of the interview. More on that in a bit, but I do want to share this clip. It's a little bit longer. It's of Tucker Carlson, and he explains why he's doing the interview. And I think it's important that you hear this morning. And tomorrow morning, I'll be sure to pull clips from the interview because I'm sure it's going to be important, explosive. But this is Tucker Carlson, and he's explaining why he's interviewing Putin. Here we go.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously. So we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians, and it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy. The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the US dollar. These are not small changes. They are history-altering developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And they think that because no one has told them the truth. Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers. And they do that mostly by omission. For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too. Freedom of speech is our birthright. We were born with the right to say what we believe. That right cannot be taken away no matter who is in the White House. But they're trying anyway. Almost 3 years ago, the Biden administration illegally spied on our text messages and then leaked the contents to their servants in the news media. They did this in order to stop a Putin interview that we were planning. Last month, we're pretty certain they did exactly the same thing once again. But this time, we came to Moscow anyway. We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States, and we want it to remain prosperous and free. We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall. Anyone can watch the entire thing, shot live to tape and unedited, on our website, tuckercarlson.com. Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform, X, and we're grateful for that. Western governments, by contrast, will certainly do their best to censor this video on other less principled platforms because that's what they do. They are afraid of information they can't control. But you have no reason to be afraid of it. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. And then, like a free citizen and not a slave, you can decide for yourself. Thanks.
Wow. So I needed to play that in its entirety this morning. That was Tucker Carlson explaining why he's doing the interview with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Tucker Carlson's interview with Vlad could see the conservative pundit targeted by the European Union lawmakers, former members of the European Parliament and current members of the European Parliament have told Newsweek that they could sanction Tucker Carlson, or they're looking into it. So Tucker Carlson, he visited Russia, and he revealed that he's going to be releasing his interview soon with the Russian leader. I'm pretty sure it's dropping today. We'll have to see. But Tucker Carlson, his work in Russia could see the former Fox News host in hot water with the EU. So this guy, his name is Guy Verhofstadt. He's a current member of the European Parliament, and he said that he's going to be in hot water. The lawmaker who has called for the EU to explore imposing a travel ban on Tucker Carlson, described Carlson as a mouthpiece of former President Donald Trump and Putin, adding as Putin is a war criminal and the EU sanctions all those who assist him in that effort. It seems logical that the External Action Service examine his case as well. So this is the department that looks to sanction people and people who are, assisting Putin. You just heard in the tape, Tucker Carlson isn't assisting Putin. He's trying to get the truth out there. This is exactly why so many people look to America as a beacon of freedom and not the European Union. And I love how this suddenly became about Donald Trump, the lawmaker, Guy, what's his name? Verhofstadt of the European Union. I love how he suddenly made it all about Donald Trump. Explaining his motive for the interview, Tucker Carlson said in the video I just played, most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine and what his goals are now. We're not here because we love Putin. We're not here to encourage you to agree with what Putin might say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. I agree. More information is always better. Word of advice to the EU: don't start sanctioning journalists you don't agree with if you want to discredit someone, because silencing your opponent is not something the winning side does in debate. If you care about the truth, the last thing you would want to do is to try to silence people out of debate and out of discourse. But clearly, the EU doesn't care about little things like freedom of thought. That said, I don't think threats like this will do much of anything to stop Tucker Carlson from interviewing Putin or dropping the interview. I'm pretty sure he's already done it. Maybe people are genuinely concerned uh, that he is actually going to get sanctioned by the EU. Tucker Carlson, I'm actually genuinely concerned that he will get sanctioned. I don't know what those sanctions will look like. Hopefully, it's just a travel ban, but it depends on the context of or content, really, of the interview. And if they deem it as what he says here, um, he says that he's, aiding or assisting him in in the war or this war effort, and Putin is a war criminal. If they treat Tucker Carlson like a war criminal, it could be really bad for him. He's risking a lot by dropping this interview. So I'm excited to watch it. I hope it drops today. I'm pretty sure it's going to. We'll have to see. All right, I do have to take a quick break. You're listening to the Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9. We'll be right back. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching, smash that like button, share this out with your normie friends. We're going to be back talking a little bit about, not only do I want to talk about the HHS and their lack of scientific data to back up the claim here that gender affirming care is medically necessary. They have no evidence. I think they've got like 2 pages of evidence on that. I want to get to that, but I also want to get to Kieran Jean Pierre and Doocy and their clash that they had the other day on whether or not Joe Biden and his brain still work. So we're back now. Okay, many people are worried that Joe Biden is not what you would call mentally fit. And this worry is valid. Okay, this concern is valid considering he's the current leader of the free world and would like to hold on to that title for another 4 years. Okay, so people are genuinely concerned that Joe Biden is not what you would call mentally fit. People don't go looking for reasons to classify why Biden is not as mentally sharp as he once was. You don't have to go look for reasons. It's painfully obvious that he's not as mentally sharp as he once was. It's painfully obvious because he does and says asinine things every single day. You don't have to go looking to say that Joe Biden isn't mentally fit. It's just so clear. So Peter Doocy and Kieran Jean Pierre, they clashed yesterday. Yes, yesterday. And they were talking about Joe Biden's mental fitness. And well, here's the exchange. I'm going to share it with you on the buzz. Be sure to text me at 309-451-9299. Here we go.
How's President Biden ever going to convince the 3/4 of voters who are worried about his physical and mental health that he is okay, even though in Las Vegas he told a story about recently talking to a French president who died in 1996?
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you,
What-
sir.
what is
We're
the
going to
rabbit hole?
Go ahead.
He said
Go
he
ahead.
talked to Mitterrand.
Go ahead.
in-
You saw the president in Vegas, in California. You've seen the president in South Carolina. You saw him in Michigan. I'll just leave it there. Go ahead.
How's President Biden ever going to convince?
It was beautiful. That exchange is absolutely amazing. According to the Daily Caller, White House press secretary Kieran Jean Pierre, who is black and lesbian, by the way, Kieran Jean Pierre immediately cut the Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy's questioning short as he asked about the president's mental health at Tuesday's briefing. So this was on Tuesday, a couple days ago. But Doocy questioned Jean Pierre on the president confusing French President Emmanuel Macron uh, with former President Francois Mitterrand. Mitterrand, I think I'm saying that right now. He died of prostate cancer back in 1996. So he was confusing this former French president for the current French president, Macron. And he asked this question: how is President Joe Biden ever going to convince 3/4 of voters who are worried about his physical and mental health that he's actually okay, even though in Las Vegas he recently told the story about talking to a French president who died in 1996? Okay, Joe Biden, he sees dead people? Is there something we don't know about the president? Is he speaking with the dead? And Jean Pierre, she shot back and she goes, I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you, sir. What's the rabbit hole? Why? He said he talked to this French president. So then she shoots back and she says, you saw him in Vegas, you saw him in California, South Carolina, you saw him in Michigan, and I'll just leave it there. And he turned to his colleague sitting next to him. How is that a rabbit hole? I think we would love to know what rabbit hole she's referring to. How is discussing the president's mental health a rabbit hole? Kieran Jean Pierre, she's so bad at her job, She can't even answer this extremely easy question. Is he mentally fit? But to be fair, she's probably using the phrase rabbit hole wrong. And I wouldn't even be surprised if she didn't know what that means. Does she even really know what the phrase rabbit hole means? The definition of the term rabbit hole is, quote, used to refer to a bizarre, confusing, nonsensical situation or environment. Yes, typically one um, of which it is difficult to take yourself out of. Okay, so I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you. Um, and here's the sentence she used it in. Okay, used it in. He'll continue fear mongering to promote his agenda, no matter how far down the rabbit hole it takes him. Okay, so that this is it used in a sentence. Okay, that's the term. And to be honest, I mean, this kind of defines President Joe Biden's mental health, doesn't it? And maybe it is a rabbit hole. It's confusing. It's nonsensical. Everybody just isn't. I mean, his own White House staffers, the cybersecurity staff. He was a head honcho over there, and he came out and he said everybody knows that he's not as quick as he used to be. Okay, that's it. I think we really know what she meant by this phrasing, a rabbit hole. It means that she's feeling too lazy to dance around the question and figure out some lie to say. That's what this is really about. So he'll continue. I mean, this is a very important question. Is the president mentally sound? Is he of is he mentally fit? Many people are worried because he wants to hold the title for another 4 years of the leader of the free world. People are concerned about this. So Peter Doocy, I love it. I love how he goes after this woman. And he does not hold back. All right. I'm back next. This is the Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. And things I like to do on the program, I like to bring some good news stories that bring a smile to your face because believe me, there's a lot of news stories that will make you want to pull your hair out. We talked about President Joe Biden. Is he mentally fit? Kieran Jean Pierre, she refuses to answer the question. She's too lazy and she didn't want to dance around the question and figure out some sort of lie to tell Peter Doocy when he asked, why did President Joe Biden say he was talking to a French president who's been dead since 1996? Why did he come out and say that? The clip is out there. He said it for everyone to hear. So we talked about that, and we also talked about Tucker Carlson. He might actually get sanctioned by the EU. I would not put this past the EU. We have a current EU member saying that Tucker Carlson will not be exempt from this department that looks to sanction people who assist Putin, the war criminal. That's what I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said, the current lawmaker. He's a member of the European Parliament. And we also talked about Las Vegas, this courtroom, this felon had beaten up a fellow inmate. And ironically, this was the same courtroom where a maniac, like a flying squirrel, he turned into a flying squirrel and pounced on this Las Vegas judge. So something's going on in that courtroom. They need to revise their policies, I think. But real quick, I want to get to this story. It's a good news story. It'll bring a smile to your face for sure. But he's 77 years old. Over the past 40 years, 77-year-old Pete Bischoff of Iowa has been donating blood. Okay, he started giving blood. They're platelets. That's what he donates. He started giving blood while in the U.S. Army, while stationed in Germany in 1966. Okay, so he started giving blood while he was in the Army. He was stationed in Germany in 1966. That donation was the start of something special as he recently reached his 1,000th donation. So he's been donating for quite some time. And that's more times than anyone, within miles around. Okay. Like this guy has donated 125 gallons of blood over the years. 125. That's Pete. He's 77 years old. The staff at the blood bank, they celebrated the accomplishment with a large balloon, other gifts, and a fun certificate. As things roll on, Pete actually is planning to continue donating platelets every 2 weeks as long as he remains healthy. He explained, I have to be in pretty good health to donate these platelets. I watch my weight. It helps that I have an O negative blood type, which happens to be the universal blood type and uh, can be used in transfusions for any blood type. So yeah, he's got O negative. I mean, this is a sweet story. I don't know. I don't give blood. I've never given blood. It freaks me out. I'll never do it. um, I just can't do it with the needles. But I am so grateful for people like Pete who can suck it up and are willing to donate blood. So thank you, Pete. I'll be back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9, 7 o'clock hours coming next. Hey, folks, we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee real quick. You're listening to the Morning Buzz. Woohoo! I love the 7 o'clock hour. I'm telling you, the people who tune in during the 7 o'clock hour, y'all are the best. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Morning Buzz. It's a daily show, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And I'm so excited to get to a few of these stories in the 7 o'clock hour. I love my 7 o'clock hour listeners, so you guys get the best stories. No, I'm just kidding. But not really. These are really explosive stories. So this one went under the radar. New York City mayor, he's bragging about his chocolate staff, and he compares himself to Jesus Christ. And he says, "That's why people are hating me. It's because I'm chocolate and I'm like Jesus Christ." Wow. I didn't know the words chocolate, Jesus Christ, and that's why people are hating me could be all lumped into one story. But here it is. The New York City mayor is bragging about his chocolate skin and how he's like Jesus Christ. Nice. We're going to talk about Biden's Health and Human Services, the HHS, and how they actually reveal something very shocking. They have a lack of scientific data to back up the claim that gender affirming care is medically necessary. They've got 2 pages. That's it on scientific data that they use to claim that gender affirming care is medically necessary. So we're going to get into that story. Plus, is this even America? Over 1,200, think about this, 1,200 Atlanta, Georgia homes have been taken over by squatters. And these squatters are running illegal strip clubs in these homes. That's what's going on in Atlanta right now. Is this even America? Is this even America? All of that and more on the Morning Buzz. You can text me at 309-451-9299. Eric Adams, he's got 99 problems, but his race ain't one. Okay. So he claimed that people are critical of his administration because he is primarily staffed with what leftists call people of color. Okay. I just call them people. I call black people, or I call them people, right? If I'm describing somebody, I just say that's a black person. Okay. These people are, I mean, they're just people of color. It's not that different than colored people, which was the terminology they used back in the 1960s. These people are so racist. Um, just be straight, just be blunt, right? Black people. Uh, he compared himself to Jesus Christ as well, Eric Adams did, and he described his staff as chocolate, which, what? And I know you never imagined the terms Eric Adams, chocolate, and Jesus would be likened in the same story, lumped all together. But with progressives, anything is possible. So here we have it from Fox News. Adams, who struggled, he struggled to contend with the city's unprecedented influx of illegal immigrants, and he's currently facing an FBI investigation into his mayoral campaign. He told a town hall in Brooklyn late last week that he's being attacked just like New York City's first black mayor, David Dinkins. Okay. He says, "We're moving the needle forward. Is there more to do? You're darn right there is." This is what Adams says. "But this committed team is getting it done." This is what Eric Adams says. And then he pointed to his 5 deputy mayors, which I don't know why the taxpayers are paying for 5 deputy mayors. It seems like a little bit of overkill. Sure, okay, maybe like an assistant mayor or maybe 2, maybe 3, but 5? He's got 5 deputy mayors, and then he's got himself. I don't know. But all of his deputy mayors, they're women, and as the left would say, people of color. They're women and they're people of color. And he goes, stand up, they need to see you." And he called them out one by one. And he says this, "Have you ever seen this much chocolate lead the city of New York?" And then the crowd just thunderous applause. It's like, what? Am I being punked? Like, this is the guy running New York City? This is the guy. And then he goes on, he says, "And then you go down the line, look who's here. This is representative of the city. That's why people are hating me. You're trying to figure out why they're hating on me. It's because I'm like Jesus and I'm chocolate." Maybe it's possible that the Biden administration gave him a stern finger pointing. Remember when Eric Adams was like actually coming out and sounding like a conservative, and then they launched all kinds of FBI investigations, sex allegations against this guy? Maybe Joe Biden and the administration, they gave him a stern finger pointing and told him that he's not being progressive enough, because Eric Adams actually was coming out and being critical of the Biden administration and of Joe Biden because they caused the border crisis, and he's pretty sick and tired of it. And he was starting to sound like a conservative, but I think that they gave him a stern finger pointing and said, "Hey, you're not being progressive enough and you need to settle back down into your woke roots." Because, Sleepy Joe Biden, you know what he thinks of black people who disagree with him. He thinks that they ain't black. He said that. "If you ain't voting for me, you ain't black." That's what he said. That's what he said. And in Adam's case, it would appear that Joe Biden is blacker than him, at least according to leftist standards. Okay. And oh, I mean, this was truly incredible. And Mayor Brandon Johnson is another one. He had a crazy clip. I didn't pull the clip or anything. But he comes out and he says, "Well, I've got a wife and kids, and it's hard for me to do my job." I'll pull the clip. I'll pull it here and I'll bring it up in about 7:30. I'll find the clip, but I can't remember exactly what Brandon Johnson said, but he's another one where I'm just like, really? That guy's the mayor of one of the largest cities in the country? I mean, and then we've got this guy, Eric Adams, saying he's chocolate and he's Jesus Christ. Like, where do these people come from? Uh, so, and who elects these people? Who goes into the polling place, grabs a ballot, and who is like, yes, I'm gonna vote for this guy. I don't know. Now I do want to get to this story. You don't need a scientific degree to know that you cannot change your gender. I don't need a degree. I don't need a medical degree. I know that you cannot change your gender. Okay. No matter how many hormones you have, no matter how many uh, surgeries you have, you can't change your gender. Can't change your sex. Gender isn't a thing. You also don't need to go to college to know that gender ideology is asinine and it's totally invalid. You definitely don't need to go to college to know that Rachel Levine is a man. Okay, but Levine thinks you need to go to college to learn all of that. Okay, because only there is where you're going to find the evidence to back up the claim that gender affirming care is medically necessary, safe, and effective for trans and non binary youth. That's where the evidence must be, because guess what? The HHS, the head of the HHS, Rachel Levine, and the HHS, they certainly don't have much data to justify this statement that gender affirming care is medically necessary. I do want to play this clip about Rachel Levine to remind you who he is um, and what this guy's all about. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
The Assistant Secretary for the Department of Health and Human Services. She's the highest ranking openly transgender federal official in the country.
What would you say to folks who think that they're being reasonable by saying, why can't children just wait till they're 18?
Adolescence is hard and puberty is hard. What if you're going through the wrong puberty? What if you inside feel that you are female, but now you're going through a male puberty?
The argument is, well, they're too young to know.
I want to make it clear that for prepubertal children, there are no medical procedures done. The standard of care allows them to explore that with therapy.
Admiral Rachel Levine is a pediatrician and the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Health and Human Services.
Well, there you have it. So, according to Turning Point USA, here's the story. The Department of Health and Human Services Assistant Secretary Rachel Levine is the first openly transgender identifying individual to hold office, and this office requires Senate confirmation. Levine is a biological man who says that he's a woman, and has been outspoken, and he's been an outspoken advocate for transgender issues, particularly for minors who identify as transgender and wish to undergo certain medical treatments such as hormone therapy or puberty blockers. Now, this nonprofit watchdog group, love it, Protect the Public's Trust, PPT, they filed a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, and they wanted to obtain records from the Department of Health and Human Services that support pro transgender claims that they've articulated. Okay, they've said that gender affirming care is medically necessary, safe, effective for trans and non binary youth. The request is specifically intended to obtain records of scientific evidence, studies, and or data to support the assistant secretary's claim that gender affirming care is medically necessary. So in response to this, the HHS, they provide this nonprofit who made the FOIA request. This is PPT, the Protect the People's Trust. They provided them with a 2-page PDF document. Well, would you look at that? Would you look at that? Look, if you are even thinking about claiming to justify permanently altering a child's body and invasively disrupting their hormonal levels, I mean, if you're thinking to justify this, right, you've got to, at the very least, have better than more than you've got to have more than 2 pages on record, right? If you're willing to go out there and justify permanently altering a child's body, chopping off their genitals and mutilating their genitals, I mean, you have got to have more evidence than just 2 pages on record. That's all they've got. They've got 2 pages. The document that the nonprofit received, of course, it's titled Gender Affirming Care and Young People, and it can be found on the department's website. Rather than being a collection of scientific studies and data, the document is a small brochure claiming that research demonstrates that gender affirming care improves the mental health and overall well being of gender diverse children. They don't even have the data to back this up. They don't have the data to back any of it up. That's because good data doesn't exist when it comes to chopping off the healthy body parts of children and consuming large amounts of hormones that go against your body's natural biological chemistry. There is no data that exists, good data that exists to back this up. Okay. Any data that I've ever seen has proved that this is probably the worst thing you can do to fix gender identity issues. So last year, Rachel Levine, the secretary, was asked in an interview why he's so against people waiting until they're 18 to decide if they should transition. So he is against people waiting until they're 18 to decide if they should transition. And his response was to ponder on what happens if a child goes through the wrong puberty. Just imagine if if the boy thinks that she's a girl and or he's a girl and he goes through male puberty. You can't go through the wrong puberty. Okay? Everyone listening to me this morning knows that's that's not how these things work. Whatever puberty your biology aligns with is the right puberty. Even cavemen knew this. I mean, I just and they didn't have a whatever medical degree Rachel Levine has. She's got all kinds of medical he's got all kinds of medical degrees, but again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that this is all asinine. And it's asinine, especially when you're pushing it on kids. Just yesterday, Politico, they published an interview with Rachel Levine where he said transgender medicine is medical care. This man is delusional, and he doesn't really even have to open his mouth for you to know that. He doesn't have to say transgender medicine is medical care. Look at him. He's delusional. If you're going to get on stage and tell the entire world that it's medically necessary to alter the body to align with one's mind and what's going on upstairs in your mind, and you have to medically alter your body, you better be able to back up that statement, especially when the focus of that claim involves children. And they've got 2 pages, folks, the HHS. All right, I do have to take a quick break. You're listening to the Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9. I'll be back. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. And, is this what progressives mean when they say housing is a right? I'm going to be talking about this squatter story. Is this even America? I'm questioning this because over 1,200 Atlanta homes have been taken over by squatters, and they've been opening illegal strip clubs in these homes. And we have a word for this. Back in my day, right, it was referred to as trespassing and people would get arrested for it. But because progressives need to change the definitions of words to justify their asinine policies and ideology, that's how the term trespasser was replaced with squatter, even though the two meanings are identical. Okay. Squatters, they're trespassing. It's my professional opinion that all of this is unconstitutional. I'm not a judge, I'm not a lawyer, so take that with a grain of salt, but I'm pretty sure that this would not hold up in the court of law, uh, and it wouldn't be held up to the highest standards of the law, okay? In October, we're gonna get to this, an Atlanta neighborhood where squatters opened up an illegal strip club in a home. So we're gonna be right back, um, on the Morning Buzz. Smash that like button. Wowza. Is this even America? Is this America anymore? I Over 1,200 Atlanta homes have been taken over by squatters. And some squatters, they even go to such great lengths and they open up illegal strip clubs in other people's homes. Yes. This is real. This is real and this is America. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Coming up in just a little bit, we are going to be talking about Las Vegas, this felon. He beats up a fellow inmate. And ironically, this happened in the courtroom where that maniac pounced on a judge. I covered that. It was like this guy turned into a flying squirrel, launched himself at this Las Vegas judge, and something is going on in that courtroom because another inmate, a different inmate, in the same courtroom randomly attacked and started punching a fellow inmate at a hearing. So we're going to talk about it. And Tucker Carlson, folks, he might get sanctioned by the EU for putting his Putin interview out there. I'm thinking it's going to drop today. And we will talk about the clash between Kiron Jean-Pierre, who is black and lesbian, and Doocy. They had a little spat on whether or not if Joe Biden's brain works still. So we're going to chat about all of that. But first, let's get to this story. There's many places throughout the nation where private property rights have de facto been replaced by something called squatters' rights. Okay. So we no longer have private property rights. There's some places, right, where it's all been replaced by something they are now calling squatters' rights. So squatters' rights they're insane. They're as insane as they sound. The local government, they steal somebody's right to the private property that he paid for, and they hand it over to some sort of degenerate thief who did nothing to be afforded that property, didn't pay for it. And Atlanta, it's one of these places throughout the nation, Atlanta, Georgia. It's one of these places where property rights have de facto been replaced by squatters' right. Atlanta is one of these places. So, according to the New York Post, I've got the scoop. Squatters are ruining entire neighborhoods in Atlanta. And I know this to be true because my brother, he traveled, he was going down, I think, to down south on a camping trip, and he was sending me photographs of these neighborhoods that he was passing through in Atlanta. And it's real. It's real. There are entire neighborhoods that are being ruined. And police response to evict is so slow, and some homeowners have resorted to paying off these degenerates to leave. I mean, they are trying to pay them to leave their house that they paid for. Brazen squatters even opened up an illegal strip club on the property they had taken over. One, just one of the 1,200 homes, which has been squatted in, uh, in squatted in the city. This is according to the National Rental Home Council. So they say that 1,200 homes in Atlanta have been squatted in. And one of these squatted homes was turned into an illegal strip club. Evicting squatters in Atlanta is tough. Meanwhile, online listings and virtual real estate agents, it makes it easy for squatters to identify vacant properties to break into. So they find the listing, they break into it, and this is what I mean. Is this what progressives mean when they say housing is a right? Is this what they mean? You just break into somebody's house that they're selling and you just stay there and open up an illegal strip joint? Like, come on. We used to have a word for this back in my day. It used to be referred to as trespassing, and people would get arrested for it. But because progressives need to change the definitions of words to justify their crazy policies and ideology, that's how the term trespasser was replaced with the term squatter, even though the two meanings are identical. Trespasser, squatter, same thing. Okay. So it's my unprofessional opinion that all of this is unconstitutional. Now, I'm no judge, I'm no lawyer, so take that with a grain of salt, but I'm pretty sure this would not hold up in court if it were held up to the highest standards of the law. Okay. People have private property rights. If the right, you have rights. Um, Pursuit of happiness. That's owning property. So in October, an Atlanta neighborhood found itself at the center of a scandal involving squatters who transformed a home into an illegal strip club, complete with weekend parties and even live horses on the property. So they had horses on the property. The drama unfolded where four individuals took up residence without permission. Little did the neighbors know that the 4,000 square foot, 5-bedroom home with 3 baths would become a den of illicit activity. Okay, the neighborhood did not think, the neighbors were like, what is going on? This is a den of illicit activity. The squatters ran this strip club, held noisy parties, and even organized car races in the street, ruining the neighborhood for others. This is insane. This is actually insane. The very fact that progressives have decided that breaking and entering overrides one's God given right to private property is baffling. They've decided that breaking and entering, yeah, that overrides any kind of rights you have. And apparently, these squatter rights just trump everything, even if people are engaged in illegal activity. Okay, it'd be one thing if these squatters, it was a mom and, single kids and they busted into the home and she had to feed the kids or whatever and provide them shelter. It'd be one thing and I'm not advocating for that either because they didn't do anything to earn that property. Okay. People are now scared to even go on vacation because God forbid a degenerate loser finds out and takes over your home by squatting. Ew, even the term squatter feels dirty. I cannot imagine anyone who squats in someone else's home is remotely close to clean. Uh, it's comical and it's infuriating how the law now handles this as a civil matter when it's criminal. They handle squatting like it's a civil matter. It's criminal. They're trespassing. This is just one reason why you should never, and I mean never, never buy property in a progressive run area because squatters' rights may be coming to a place near you. All right, I do have to take a quick break. You're listening to the Morning Buzz. We'll be back. Tucker Carlson, is he going to be sanctioned by the EU because he's got an interview with Putin dropping soon? Stay tuned. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are going to be back in just about 10 seconds, and Judge Joe McGraw will be joining me, and we're going to talk a little bit about the border. We're also going to talk about Goshen. There is a bill out there that aims to block Goshen from receiving federal tax credits for EV battery parts. Um, or for this EV battery parts plant. They're receiving all kinds of money. I think Illinois, the state of Illinois, it's like over $500 million. The federal government is giving even more. I think it's $8 billion total that they're getting in tax credits. So we're going to talk about it here on the Morning Buzz. We'll be right back. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Coming up in just a little bit, we'll talk about Tucker Carlson. Don't you worry. We're going to get to him and how he might be sanctioned by the EU for this Putin interview that's about ready to drop. And then we'll also talk about how in Las Vegas, it's pretty funny, this guy, he's an inmate. He beats up a fellow inmate. And ironically, this is in the courtroom. If you guys remember where that maniac, he pounced on a judge. Uh, and I mean, like a flying squirrel, he pounced on this like Las Vegas judge. And, I don't know what's going on in that courtroom uh, because another inmate in the same courtroom, different guy, he randomly attacked and started punching a fellow inmate. So I think they need to update the courtroom policies. Just saying. Joining me now, Judge Joe McGraw. First, let me start out with this, Judge. In your time as a judge, obviously you're not a judge anymore. You're running in the 17th congressional district. Curious, did you ever have anybody just launch themselves at you like a flying squirrel?
Morning, Kat. Fortunately, no. I did have a few death threats during my time on the bench, but never any real-time, trampoline launched lunge.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be tough to be a judge. So tell me a little bit about that, your time as a judge, and how that is going to help you in U.S. Congress. You're running for the 17th congressional district. Esther Joy King ran in that district last time. Right now, it's Eric Sorensen, the weatherman, the gay weatherman. That's very important to him, not to me. I don't care. But he's in that district right now. Tell me how your experience as a judge will translate into this position, if at all.
Oh, there's a direct application, Kat. For almost 22 years, as a circuit judge, I handled every kind of case from a death penalty case to child custody case. All those are fraught with all kinds of heavy decisions that have a lot of implications. And so during my last couple of years on the bench, I saw all the consequences of the Biden-Sorensen open border policy. I saw the huge uptick in crime committed by illegals against American citizens. I saw the shocking number of fentanyl deaths from fentanyl that came across the southern border. And that's why I decided to get in the race and run. But as a judge, all your decisions are tough decisions, and you have to listen very carefully to both sides. You have to consider the credibility of the witness. You have to weigh the evidence as presented. And then you have to look what the law requires, and you have to make a decision. You can't vote present. So those are some of the skills that I'm going to bring to Washington, D.C., and hopefully have a role in a functional Congress.
Yeah. Well, Judge Joe McGraw, I want to ask you a little bit about the border. So recently there's this border security bill. It would allow, I think it's like 1.8, I want to say million illegals per year. That's like 5,000 a month, or 5,000 per day or something like that. It's just a lot of illegals that'll come in. And then Joe Biden kind of has it in there where he's got the authority as the president to kind of implement a shutoff, but only after the 1.8 million illegals entered in, and it codifies illegal immigration. They are allowed into the country, and automatically made like some sort of citizen, and then after that, there's going to be a shut off at the border. I believe that's the bill. Have you seen the border security bill that's so-called bipartisan?
I've seen the so-called bipartisan bill originating in the Senate, and it's wrong on pretty much every aspect. You're right; it does codify permitting illegals to break the law. It's just carved out an exception for a certain number of people to continue to break the law, whereas right now they're all breaking the law. So it's kind of like you just move the goalpost a little bit, and those that are breaking the law now, well, some of them won't be breaking the law because we change the law. We don't change behavior. We don't change practices. And the immigration system under President Trump worked very effectively. The Remain in Mexico provision allowed proper vetting of those seeking asylum while they were in Mexico, rather than flooding in mass amounts across the border as they are now into our communities, into our country with zero vetting. No one knows who they are, where they are, or what they're up to.
One quick thing that I wanted to bring up was the Chinese nationals. Now, there have been several people who have said that this is the largest group of illegal immigrants who have come to the United States. They're Chinese nationals, foreign nationals.
Mhm.
And it brings me to this bill. I believe Darren LaHood, he came out with an endorsement of you, right?
Yes, he did. Mhm.
hmm
Congressman
so
Darrell.
he's got a bill out there that would prevent Goshen, and I'm sure you've heard of it. It's planned for Manteno, Illinois, and it's an
Mhm.
electric vehicle battery maker. It's CCP, right? And he says, hey, in this bill, you're not going to get federal tax credits. And I wanted to get your thoughts here about Goshen. Does that go far enough? Should we be making bills that prevent CCP or communist or Chinese or hostile countries, foreign adversaries from even uh, participating in domestic businesses here and opening up businesses here? Should it go further? Should we ban like places like China, Iran? I know State Senator Sally Turner, she's got a bill out there at the state level that would ban them from purchasing farmland.
Yes.
But it doesn't go as far as to say, hey, this Chinese electric battery company can't, buy municipal land, which is
Mhm.
what they did. It was like a municipal zoning.
Mhm.
It's not zoned agricultural. So, your thoughts there? Should we have a bill that goes farther? Are there problems with having a bill that goes farther?
Well, whenever you're talking about one size fits all, you're always going to have some challenges. You make a rule, you're going to have to make exceptions to the rule. So I think that we need to look at China separately first. They are our enemy. They're not our competitor. They are our enemy. They fight on many fronts. They definitely fight on the economic front. They fight in a military front with their aggressive actions. They steal intellectual property. They hack us. They steal our patents. They've been ripping us off for years. And they are self-avowed. They desire to, be the preeminent power in just a few years. So you can't just look at the economics, although that's extremely important. But when you have a self-declared enemy of the United States with self-declared world domination aims to supplant the U.S. and to no longer use the dollar, basically to entirely change the game, you have to view them with an extra level of scrutiny. And any subsidies, any form of credit to induce them to come here is counter to what the real nature is. Every business that is here on the part of the Chinese has been okayed or is some way connected with the Chinese Communist Party. They don't have free enterprise. Don't kid yourself. And so this battery production is, whether they admit it or not, is linked to the Communist Party directly or indirectly, and it gives them yet another foothold in America, and it produces a product of dubious value. I mean, Americans have pretty much rejected electronic vehicles on a large scale. There may be a small scale application. And so to allow them to compete with Americans on American soil and provide any incentive at all weakens America and strengthens China. And if we need electric cars in some form, if we need batteries in some form, we need it to be built by Americans, not by the Chinese. We don't want to incentivize that.
Well, Judge Joe McGraw, we're getting close to a quick break. Do you have time for one more segment here at the end?
Sure.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, folks. You're listening to The Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We'll be right back. Hello, live streamers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Smash that like button. This is Judge Joe McGraw. He's joining me. Coming back, I do want to ask about the Illinois Supreme Court justices. I think you'll have an interesting perspective because you are a judge.
Yes.
So the assault weapons ban that they heard, Dan Calkins, he had this case and he brought it forward. It was, he argued things like equally protected or equal protection under the law, where cops get the guns, but the citizenry doesn't. And then there were other arguments in the case. And then the U.S. Supreme Court, they had it on the docket, but they tossed it to look at Calkinson's case because he appealed on the grounds that, hey, these justices, they took $1 million from the defendants in this case, Governor J.B. Pritzker. He gave money to Mary Kay O'Brien and Elizabeth Rockford, I think is her name. But I wanted to ask you about that because you as a judge, would there be, Caperton, I think is the precedent there where it was like only $1,000 or something like that in that case. And it gave the appearance of bias. So your thoughts about the assault weapon ban and these judges getting essentially millions of dollars from the defendants that they heard the case about via their campaigns?
I've lived a life as a judge according to the highest standards. And one of the so much of the judicial standards are self-imposed. In other words, it's the responsibility of each and every judge to avoid the appearance of impropriety. So even if there isn't an actual conflict, you have to be mindful of the fact that it may appear as though there's a conflict or a vested interest or something. And that's one of the ways that the public is able to maintain confidence in the impartiality of the judges. As to the assault weapon ban, there have been several lawsuits, as you know. There are several different procedural stages. One is we're waiting for the Supreme Court to take action or not. But the bottom line is that Illinois, along with many other states, has enacted law after law after law after law, which only restrict law-abiding citizens. If you're a law-abiding citizen, you're going to obey the law. You've got skin in the game. You don't want to suffer any sanctions or consequences. But I had a gun court in my courtroom, and not a week went by when I didn't see at least half a dozen or a dozen convicted felons with firearms, using firearms. So the most restricted class of people, convicted felons who are not supposed to have any kind of firearm, had no problem getting firearms, either through straw purchase, stolen, manufactured, etc. And we know that more laws aren't going to affect behavior. We have to enforce the laws that we have.
Judge, we're going to be right back for the radio friends. Just hang out 1 second. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. I appreciate you guys tuning in each and every morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. It's a daily show. And before we took the break, we were having a conversation with Judge Joe McGraw. We continued that conversation on the live stream, so you guys can go there, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Cat Peterson 929. Coming back, we've got Judge Joe McGraw here. He's running in the Illinois Congressional District, the 17th District. We talked about Goshen. We talked about the border security bill that's so-called bipartisan. I wanted to have the judge speak to what was going on in the state of Illinois with the Illinois Supreme Court justices, where they voted, they ruled that and upheld the assault weapons ban. This was Governor J.B. Pritzker. He was sued. It went all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court, and they upheld the weapons ban. But Governor J.B. Pritzker was a defendant in that case, and he gave millions of dollars to two justices that sit on that court, on the Illinois Supreme Court. So I wanted to have the judge on real quick. Just tell me, Judge, there's a problem there, isn't it? Is there a problem with judges receiving that amount of money?
Well, I would say it's unprecedented. I've never heard of anything like that. I never heard of anything like that. And it definitely, as I mentioned earlier, creates the appearance of bias, the appearance of impropriety. And when you take an issue, like a Fourth Amendment issue or a Second Amendment issue in this case, that's really fraught with a lot of emotion, a lot of divergent points of view, you need to reassure the public that you're going to get a full and fair hearing. When that came to light, it definitely cast a pall, a shadow over the ability to be impartial by certain members of the court. Now, at that point, it was incumbent upon the members of the court to decide whether or not they could be fair and impartial. They declined to recuse themselves. We don't have a mechanism to, enforce removing a judge who has a case assigned to them at that level if they are not going to recuse themselves. But it definitely, instead of accepting the outcome as legitimate, their decision to uphold the ban, the common perception was the fix was in, and because of those large financial contributions. Mm-hmm. And it just further polarizes folks in this state, because there's the Democratic Chicago machine that runs the state seemingly, and there's the rest of us out in flyover country that is a tail wagging the dog, and they don't consider our rights, our values. It's strictly a Chicago-centric legislation system, and the Chicago judges ruling in favor of the governor. That's the impression.
So, Judge Joe McGraw, we've got to go. But tell me where we can find out more about you and your campaign and your run for the 17th.
Yeah, thanks, Kat. Well, today begins early voting. Primary is March 19th, so please get out and vote. You can find out more about me at judgejoeforcongress.com. You learn about our campaign and our values, or you can go on social media at Judge Joe McGraw and see what we've been up to. And, we're going to bring the values of the 17th Congressional District to Washington, not Washington values back to the 17th Congressional District.
Love it. Judge Joe McGraw, you have a great rest of your day. Folks, we'll be right back.
Thanks, Kat.
Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Before we get into the 8 o'clock hour here, I've got a lot of things planned. I want to talk about Tucker Carlson, how he might be sanctioned by the EU for his Putin interview that I believe is supposed to drop today. I also want to talk about this Las Vegas felon who beats up this fellow inmate in the same courtroom, ironically, as that guy. Remember the maniac who pounced on the judge? Yes, like a flying squirrel, he launched himself, pounced on the judge, and we're gonna get into this because that courtroom, there's something going on. Uh, and I do want to get into Doocy and Jean-Pierre and how they clash over whether or not Joe Biden's brain works. They're clashing over Joe Biden's mental fitness. So we're going to get to all of that here on the Morning Buzz. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. And let's get started. I do want to talk about this bill first, this Illinois bill. I want to talk about something that was brought forward by Cam Buckner. So Cam Buckner, he's got a bill out there. It's HB 4795, and I've got the bill right here in front of me. So I'm going to read it. Creates the Single Family Zoning Ban Act. Oh boy. It defines a zoning unit as a county, municipality, or township. And it says that they have to adopt these zoning regulations. And it provides that on and after June 1st of 2025 for a zoning unit with a population equal to or greater than 100,000 but less than 500,000, and on and after June 1st of 2026 for a zoning unit with a population equal to or greater than 500,000. The zoning unit may not zone an area exclusive for single family residential use. So they're putting a ban on zoning single family use. That's incredible. And I mean, that if they want you to live in a closet and they want you to own nothing and you'll be happy about it. That's what this is about. They want everybody living on top of each other. And he says it's because of affordable housing or whatever. And it's just like, wait a second, we're talking Peoria here. You're not going to build any more single family homes in Peoria. You're going to put a ban on it. I don't know a whole lot about the bill or what the I mean, he tweeted and he said that it was because he wants to make housing more affordable. Uh, they know that you'll own your home after about 15, 20, 30 years. It depends on your mortgage. They know you get to own that. And they don't want that happening. They want you enslaved. They want you to continue to pay rent to somebody. They say, own nothing and you'll be happy. And this is part of that. It's freaky. It's weird. I don't know if Bloomington Normal, if they're separate zoning units. If they're separate zoning units, then that would be a good thing because we fall short, both Bloomington and normal separately. They're under 100,000, but together they're well over 100,000. So I don't know. We'll have to see. Okay, let's get into it. Remember that insane inmate who launched himself like a flying squirrel and pounced on a Las Vegas judge? You guys remember the video. Well, something going on. There's something going on in that courtroom because there's another inmate, different inmate. In the same courtroom, he randomly turns around, starts attacking, pummeling, just punching this fellow inmate at a hearing. So, according to the New York Post, a convicted Las Vegas felon brutally attacked a fellow inmate during a hearing inside the same courthouse where another man jumped over a bench and attacked a judge just 1 month ago. Dustin Langham, he's 18. He's sitting next to all these inmates inside the courtroom, and then he suddenly unleashed a barrage of blindsided punches to a fellow inmate. So courtroom cameras, they captured the chaotic moment where this 18-year-old was assaulting, landing several hits on this target of his. As court personnel, they rushed over and they tried to separate the men. Langham, he pleaded guilty to biting a correctional officer and biting him on the hand during an incident last year when he was 17 years old. So that's what he was in court for that day. He has several counts of battery to an officer dating back to a December incident. And then he goes to jail. He's with this county or with this Clark County correctional officer. He winds up biting this guy. He also threw a brick at another correctional officer. This guy's deranged. But Clark County, I think they need to revise their courtroom policy. There is no reason why convicted felons should be without handcuffs, especially if this guy's violent. He's vicious. He's biting people. Okay. Liberal areas, they're getting so bad that it's gotten to a point where people are not even safe from flying felons in the courtroom with armed guards. These criminals don't even care anymore. They don't even care. They're becoming more and more and more brazen every day. They say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but that's not true, especially when you've got progressives running things. Okay. Usually it starts in places like Sin City and then it makes its way across the country. Pretty soon, every courtroom is going to have flying squirrel men launch themselves at judges. They jump the bench. They pummel other inmates in the face. A lot of these convicts, they actually lack self-control. They have impulse. They lack any form of impulse control. Democrats not only say that these felons should vote, but they claim that there has to be an end to mass incarceration. But those are some of the last things that we need to be doing if we want to keep a civilized society. We don't need felons voting, and we don't need to end mass incarceration. I think we have an under incarceration problem in a culture that victimizes criminals. But when we have so many people who resort to violence when they don't get their way, we have to keep those people away from the general public. Okay, they resort to violence if they don't get their way. This man was already in prison for biting an officer. Who in the world does that? People are they're acting like animals. In the courtroom policies, you gotta lock up an animal. An animal who bites. You would put a muzzle on a dog who bites. I don't know what's going on in that courtroom, but I'm not going to be surprised if it's not going to be long before another inmate makes headlines. I do want to shift gears, and I really want to talk about the European Union and these sanctions. So, the European Union, the EU, they don't respect the press. Okay, this is because officials there, they believe that the government should be the judge of truth. They think that the government has all the truth and they should be the judge of truth. They believe that the general public is so stupid and they can't confirm by themselves what's factual and what's information or misinformation. But history has shown us no one who cares about the truth would hide it. Okay, according to Newsweek, we've got Tucker Carlson. He might face sanctions over this interview that he's about to drop with Putin. We all know that this is newsworthy. And that you don't have to agree with anything Putin says or does. Okay. But this is newsworthy. Tucker Carlson is interviewing the leader, one of the leaders in this war. Zelensky, we've got Putin, and we've heard from Zelensky. We haven't heard from Putin. We haven't heard the whole story. So the fact that people are mad about this is what makes people want to tune in even more. Okay, because the last thing you want is for people to if the last thing you want is for people to watch this interview, then I would imagine this is the last thing you should be doing is putting sanctions on a guy conducting an interview. Okay, people are going to want to tune in more. Okay, so I want to play this in its entirety. It's a bit long, but it's worth it. It's Tucker Carlson. And he explains why he's doing this interview. He released this on X February 6th, a couple of days ago. And I think that this is going to be helpful. Here we go.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously. So we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region. here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians, and it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy. The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the US dollar. These are not small changes. They are history-altering developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And they think that because no one has told them the truth. Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers. And they do that mostly by omission. For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too. Freedom of speech is our birthright. We were born with the right to say what we believe. That right cannot be taken away no matter who is in the White House. But they're trying anyway. Almost 3 years ago, the Biden administration illegally spied on our text messages and then leaked the contents to their servants in the news media. They did this in order to stop a Putin interview that we were planning. Last month, we're pretty certain they did exactly the same thing once again, but this time we came to Moscow anyway. We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States, and we want it to remain prosperous and free. We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall. Anyone can watch the entire thing, shot live to tape and unedited, on our website, tuckercarlson.com. Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform, X, and we're grateful for that. Western governments, by contrast, will certainly do their best to censor this video on other less principled platforms because that's what they do. They are afraid of information they can't control. But you have no reason to be afraid of it. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. And then, like a free citizen and not a slave, you can decide for yourself. Thanks.
There you have it, Tucker Carlson. We are going to come back. We're going to talk about the EU possibly placing sanctions on Tucker Carlson. So Carlson, he visited Russia this week, and he said that he's going to be releasing this interview soon. I think it's going to drop today. We're going to talk about what an EU member of parliament, he's a current member of parliament, what he said about the former Fox News host Tucker Carlson. We're going to be back next on the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. Good morning. If you're watching, go ahead and smash that like button. We're going to come back. I'm going to wrap up the Tucker Carlson story, the sanctions that he could be facing from the EU, and then we'll chat about Doocy and Jean-Pierre. It's so rich. I love it. I love this bite. Because Doocy just calls her out. He's like, look, the president was talking to dead people. Does the president talk to dead people, or is he mentally unfit? And we're gonna get to that clip because I just love it so much, and I love how she goes. We're not going down that rabbit hole. We're not gonna go down that rabbit hole. Oh, Karen. Oh, Karen Jean-Pierre. She's so bad at her job. The reason why she didn't want to go down that rabbit hole was because she was so lazy that she didn't want to spin and lie her way out of the very blaring answer, which is Joe Biden is mentally unfit. That's the answer. But she didn't want to spin and lie. So yeah. All right. I'm back next. Peter Doocy, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole with you. This woman's so lazy. She's lazy and she didn't want to try to spin. She didn't want to try to lie her way out of this question. Hey, is President Joe Biden fit? Is he or mentally fit? Does his brain still work? We're going to get to that clip here in just a little bit. Before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about Tucker Carlson and his interview with Russian President Vlad. And here's the story from the from the Newsweek. Newsweek. They've got it. Tucker Carlson's interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin could see the conservative pundit targeted by the European Union lawmakers. Current and former members of the European Parliament have told Newsweek that he's going to get into some trouble. Carlson visited Russia this week, and on Tuesday, he revealed that his interview would be dropping soon with the Russian leader. I think it's going to drop today, pretty sure. But Carlson's work in Russia could see the former Fox News host in hot water. This is what Guy Verhofstadt, he's a current member of the European Parliament, said. He said he's going to find himself in some hot water. The lawmaker, who's called for the EU to explore imposing a travel ban on Carlson. They want to impose a travel ban on Carlson, described Carlson as, quote, a mouthpiece of former President Donald Trump and Putin. And he added this. He said, as Putin is a war criminal and the EU sanctions all who assist him in that effort, it seems logical that the External Action Service examine his case as well. So they're saying that he's assisting Putin, that Tucker Carlson is assisting Putin. Now, I think it's going to depend on the content within the interview. If it's deemed, hey, you're assisting him in his war crimes or whatever, then they're going to put some sanctions on him, possibly a travel ban, possibly worse. So this is a very dangerous interview that he's doing. Look, this is exactly why people look to America as a beacon of freedom and not the European Union. And I love how suddenly this became about Donald Trump. So the lawmaker, the European Parliament member, he says, oh, he's a mouthpiece for former President Donald Trump. Explaining his motive for the interview, Carlson said in a video, which we played here on the Buzz, most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine and what his goals are now. We're not here because we love Putin. This is what Carlson says. We're not here encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. I agree. More information is better. Word of advice to the EU: don't start sanctioning journalists you don't agree with if you want to discredit someone. Okay? Because silencing your opponent is not something the winning side does in a debate. If you care about the truth, the last thing you would want to do is try to silence people out of debate or discourse. But clearly the EU, they don't care about little things like freedom of thought. Okay. They don't care about that. That said, I think threats like this from the EU, it's not going to stop Tucker Carlson from interviewing or releasing the interview. I bet he's already done the interview. I don't think it's going to stop him from releasing this interview. I do have to take a quick break. You're listening to The Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We're going to get to some of your comments. Um, brains. We don't need no stinking brains. Oh no. New rallying cry for the Democrats maybe soon. Brains. We don't need no stinking brains. Um, laugh so hard. Flying squirrel man. Yeah. I mean, have you seen that video? I mean, it's worth a watch. Where he launches himself at this judge. It's quite incredible. And the best way I can describe it is a flying squirrel. He looks like a flying squirrel. All right, I'm back next. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every day. Dan, he says the hype is going to be greater than the interview. I bet the interview is going to be pretty good, Dan. I bet it's going to be pretty good because here's the thing: Americans haven't heard the other side. For some odd reason, English speaking countries, they have not heard the other side when it comes to this Ukraine Russia war. And that's what Tucker Carlson is doing in this interview. So I'm pumped for it. It's probably going to drop today. So before we took the break, I was telling you guys, Joe Biden, does he have a brain? Does his brain still work? Um, many people are genuinely concerned that Joe Biden is not what you would call mentally fit. He's not mentally fit. Even his own White House staff says that he's losing it. Okay. And they say that he's not mentally fit. So the concern is valid. Uh, because look, folks, he's currently the leader of the free world and he wants to hold that title for another 4 years. And people don't go looking for reasons to classify why Joe Biden is not as mentally sharp as he once was. People don't have to go looking for these reasons. It's painfully obvious. Obvious. He does and says asinine things every single day. Every single day. He's crazy. He's got no brain. His brain is all smoothed out. I don't know what's going on up there. Not much at all. And I genuinely have concern, like many Americans, right? 3/4 of Americans, 3/4 of Americans are worried about his physical and mental health. Here's an exchange between Black lesbian Kieran Jean-Pierre and Peter Doocy. Take a listen.
Three-quarters of voters who are worried about his physical and mental health, that he is okay, even though in Las Vegas he told a story about recently talking to a French president who died in 1996.
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you,
Why-
sir.
what is
We're
the
going to go.
rabbit hole?
Go ahead.
He said
Go
he
ahead.
talked to Mitterrand.
Go ahead.
in-
You saw the president in Vegas, in California. You've seen the president in South Carolina. You saw him in Michigan. I'll just leave it there. Go ahead.
Vice President.
Questioning Rick Carlson, he cut him off immediately. He was asking about President Joe Biden. So Ducey he questioned Jean-Pierre on the president using the current French president Macron for a former French president who died of prostate cancer back in 1996. That's well over 20 years ago, folks. And President Joe Biden, you know, how are you going to convince three-quarters of voters? Because three-quarters of voters in every single poll, they're worried about his physical and mental health. How is he going to convince people that he's okay, even though in Las Vegas, he recently told a story about talking to a dead guy. Okay, he was talking to a dead French president. He died in 1996. And Kieran Jean-Pierre, she just goes, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with you, sir. You saw the president in Vegas, in California, in South Carolina. I'll just leave it there. And Ducey then turned around to his colleagues and was like, how's that a rabbit hole? I think that we would all love to know what rabbit hole she's referring to. How is discussing the president's health a rabbit hole? Kieran Jean-Pierre, she's so bad at her job, she can't even answer this extremely easy question. Uh, just lie. Okay, just lie. Say he's mentally ill. But to be fair, she's probably using the phrase rabbit hole wrong, and I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't even know what the phrase rabbit hole meant. I don't think she really even knows what that phrase means. So the definition of the term in the phrase rabbit hole is this quote, used to refer to a bizarre, confusing, and nonsensical situation. Typically, it's a difficult one to get yourself out of. So, I mean, it does. To be honest, it kind of defines President Joe Biden, doesn't it? Getting into his mental fitness and how we're all dancing around uh, the very obvious fact that he's mentally not well. I mean, yeah, it is a bit of a rabbit hole, I guess. But I don't think she really understands it. Um, the terminology. That said, I think we all really know what she meant by the rabbit hole thing. She's just too lazy, and she dances around the question. She dances around the question, or she's too lazy to come up with some sort of lie. So this was her way to get around the question, to not figure out some sort of lie on the spot to say. So I do want to shift gears to New York Mayor Eric Adams. He bragged about his chocolate staff, and then he compares himself to Jesus Christ. And he says, "This is why people are hating me." No, actually, this happened. We're going to get to that here on the Morning Buzz. Eric Adams, he claims that people are critical of his administration because it's primarily staffed with what leftists will call people of color. I hate that. I mean, it's not much different than what the Democrats call black people back in the Civil War era. Okay, back in slavery days, colored people. And what, you changed it up a little bit? People of color? And I always say this, Abraham Lincoln was Republican, and with the Emancipation Proclamation, he preached this way. The Democrat Party, they are still the party of slavery. There's never a switch, nothing like that. They are still the party of slavery and racism. So he also compared himself to Jesus, and then he described his staff as chocolate. Yes, I know what you're thinking. I know you never imagined that the terms Eric Adams, chocolate, and Jesus would all be like in the same story, but with progressive, anything is possible. So here I've got the story. Fox News, Eric Adams, he struggles to contend with the city's unprecedented influx of illegal immigrants, and he's facing an FBI investigation currently into his mayoral campaign. And he told the town hall in Brooklyn late last week that he's being attacked, just like New York City Mayor, the first black mayor, David Dinkins. We're moving the needle forward. Is there more to do? You're darn right there is, but this committed team is getting it done. What Eric Adams. And then he points to his 5 deputy mayors. It's incredible. I don't know why you need 5 deputy mayors and why taxpayers are paying for 5 deputy mayors. 1, 2, 5. It's incredible. But they're all women, and they're all, as leftists would say, people of color. Okay, so he says, stand up, stand up. They need to see you. And he goes, have you ever seen this much chocolate lead the city of New York? And then the crowd applauds. Then he continues, he goes, and then you go down the line, look who's here. This is representative of the city. This is why people are hating me. You're trying to figure out why are they hating on me? This is cool. You know, we knew that Eric Adams, he was kind of being critical of the Biden administration. He started to sound like a conservative. But it's possible that the Biden administration gave him a stern finger pointing, launching sex allegations, FBI investigations into him. That's the stern finger pointing, right? It's possible that this happened, and they told him that he wasn't progressive enough and that he needs to settle back down into his woke roots and he needs to be woke. Because you know, what's Sleepy Biden thinks about black people who disagree with them. He says that they ain't black, right? So in Adam's case, it would appear that Biden is blacker than him, at least according to the standards. We have agreed with Joe Biden if you want to laugh. Wow. It's truly incredible. I mean, that this guy is a mayor of one of the largest cities in the nation. And Brandon Johnson, he also came out with some sort of weird quote where he was talking about his wife and kids, the reason why he can't get the city under control with the illegal immigrant influx. It's like these people are so incompetent, they're so silly. All right, I do need to take a quick break, but I want to get into this story. You don't need a scientific degree to know that you cannot change your gender. Okay, just know that we cannot change our gender. There's male, female. There's no such thing as gender. You don't need to go to college to know that gender ideology is asinine and invalid. Gender ideology is stupid. And you definitely don't need to go to college to know that Rachel Levine is a man. Just look at him. Okay, that guy's a man. And Rachel Levine thinks that you need to go to college to learn gender ideology and how to change your gender because only there colleges will use evidence to back up this claim that gender affirming care is medically necessary, safe, effective for trans and non-binary youth. That's where you're going to find the evidence in colleges because the evidence, the HHS, the Human Health Services, they don't have the evidence. They certainly don't have any data to justify this statement. The statement that claims that gender affirming care is medically necessary, safe, and effective for non-binary. I'll be back with this story. It's incredible. That's next in the buzz. Good morning. Hey, welcome to the morning buzz. I so do appreciate it. When we come back, the HHS Secretary, Rachel Levine, he's out there. He's claiming that gender affirming care is medically necessary and it's safe, it's effective. Um, well, I've got a story, and you're gonna laugh. Nonprofit watchdog group. They're called and they filed a FOIA, uh, Freedom of Information Act, and they received that they wanted records that support transgender claims that they were making. And what they got back is truly shocking. They got about 2 pages of data, not even data, like a brochure. So we're going to chat about that here next on the buzz. Smash the like button if you're watching. Um, and I'm curious, what do you guys think about squatting? So squatters, 1,200 homes have been squatted in the city of Atlanta. 1,200 homes have been squatted and taken over by squatters. There was a group of squatters who went into the house and they were running an illegal truck joint on the property they had taken over. Squatters in Atlanta are very tough, and with online listings and virtual real estate agents, it's very easy for squatters to um, identify vacant properties and break into these vacant properties. So back in my day, we call this trespassing, and people would get arrested. But because progressives, they change the definitions of words on a daily. Uh, you know, policies are free, policies are free on ideology. They've got to redefine terms. The term trespasser is replaced with squatter, even though the two meanings are identical. We're going to talk about it. Throw it in the comment section. Is it unconstitutional? Squatting. Is it unconstitutional? So I've got this story. It's from TPUSA. The Department of Health and Human Services Assistant Secretary Rachel Levine. Oh, look at him. He's a man. Okay, he's the first openly transgender identifying individual to hold an office that requires a Senate confirmation. And Levine is a biological man. Since he's a woman, he's been outspoken. He's an outspoken advocate for transgender issues, particularly for minors who identify as transgender and they wish to undergo treatments such as hormone therapy. Okay, so this nonprofit watchdog group, it's called Protect the Public's Trust. Wonderful. They filed a FOIA request to obtain records from the Department of Health and Human Services that support from transgender claims that have been articulated by the department. The request is specifically intended to obtain records, quote, records of scientific evidence, studies, and or data to support the Assistant Secretary's claim that gender affirming care is medically necessary, safe, and effective for trans and non binary youth. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. We're digging right into this story. And in response to this, HHS, they were only able to provide the nonprofit here, the PPT, the Protect the Public Trust. They only gave them a 2-page PDF document. Well, would you look at that? Would you look at that? Look, if you're thinking about claiming to justify permanently altering a child's body, mutilating their genitals, and invasively disrupting their normal hormone levels, to say the least, then you better have more than 2 pages on record. Okay, if you're going to make this huge claim that gender affirming care is medically necessary, you better have more than 2 pages. The document is titled Gender Affirming Care in Young People. It can be found on the department's website. Rather than being a collection of scientific studies and data, the document is actually just a small little brochure claiming that research demonstrates that gender affirming care improves mental health and physical well-being of gender diverse children. They don't even have the data to back this up. That's because good data does not exist when it comes to chopping healthy body parts off of your child and consuming these large amounts of hormones that go against your body's natural biological chemistry. There's no good data out there. Any data that I've seen has proved all of this is probably worse. It is the worst thing you can do to fix gender identity issues. Last year, Rachel Levine, he was asked in the interview why he's so against people waiting until they're 18 to decide to transition. He's against that. He thinks that they should transition before 18. And his response was to ponder on what happens if a child goes through wrong puberty. You can't go through wrong puberty. Everyone listening to me knows how these things work. Whatever puberty your biology aligns with, that's the right puberty. That's the right. This man's delusional, and he doesn't even have to open his mouth for you to know that he's delusional. Just look at him. All right, I'm back. That's the end of the show. Wow. You guys have a great rest of your day. We're going to be back tomorrow, Friday, 6 a.m., bright and early. And be sure to find me on YouTube, my YouTube channel. That's Captain 99. Bye bye. Love you.